The first rays of sunlight filtered through the narrow windows of Omari's modest apartment, glinting off the white walls and the few carefully arranged possessions he owned. The streets outside were already alive with the gentle hum of the town, motorbikes weaving between sleek white houses, vendors calling their wares, and children laughing as they darted through the early morning shadows. Tradition and modernity danced together in every corner. Elders wearing patterned robes spoke quietly under mango trees, while young men in crisp shirts and jeans passed by on their phones, the latest songs streaming into the air. Omari lay awake, his mind heavy with thoughts of Amina. He could hear her gentle humming in the kitchen, the sound of a woman who carried warmth in every gesture. He thought of her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke of family and the deep love they shared. Yet beneath the comfort of their home, a tension always lingered, the delicate balance between his respect for her family and the fear of falling short in the eyes of her mother, Mama Halima. He rose quietly, careful not to disturb the small apartment they shared. Every movement was measured, reflecting a life of humility and mindfulness. "Today," he whispered to himself, "I will do what is right, even if my heart trembles." Stepping onto the balcony, Omari gazed at the town below. The streets were a living tapestry of voices and movement, white-painted houses standing side by side with older, clay-colored structures. He saw neighbors exchanging polite nods, some glancing with curiosity or veiled judgment, subtle reminders of the weight of reputation and community scrutiny. In this town, every action could ripple through the eyes of others, shaping stories that might be told for years. Omari's thoughts turned to Mama Halima, frail but proud, her presence commanding respect even in her silence. He remembered the stories his father had told him as a boy, of mothers-in-law whose words could honor or wound, whose judgment often shaped the destiny of sons-in-law. Today, he would enter her world, a hospital room that was more than just a place of illness. It was a crossroads, where hidden truths and unspoken resentments might surface, where the bonds of family could be tested, and where the delicate dance of loyalty and honor would play out before his eyes. The sound of his own heartbeat seemed louder than the morning bustle. He adjusted the simple shirt over his chest, smoothing his sleeves, a ritual of self-respect and preparedness. He thought of the path ahead, not only the physical journey to the hospital, but the emotional passage he would navigate. Would Mama Halima receive him with warmth, or would the unspoken judgments he feared reveal themselves today? As he stepped out of the apartment building, the sun fell across his path, illuminating the sleek white houses and the vibrant modern town in which he lived. He walked steadily, his steps measured, yet each footfall carried the weight of expectation, the silent pressure of tradition and the longing for acceptance. The town stretched before him, alive with life and stories, each person moving to their own rhythm, yet all connected to the invisible threads of culture, family, and honor. Omari breathed deeply, carrying both hope and fear. The hospital awaited, a place where love, duty, and judgment would collide. Every thought of Amina and her family, every echo of advice from elders, and every silent wish for acceptance converged in that moment. Today was not just a visit. It was a test of courage, respect, and the strength of his heart. The morning sun poured gently through the small windows of Omari's modest apartment, glinting off the white tile floor and illuminating the simple furnishings. The air was filled with the aroma of simmering tea and freshly baked bread. Amina moved quietly in the kitchen, her hands skillful and calm, arranging the breakfast tray with care. Each movement spoke of love and dedication, a rhythm learned through years of respect for family and tradition. Omari leaned against the doorway, his eyes soft as they followed her movements. The sight of her humming softly, pouring tea into 2 cups, and placing slices of bread neatly on a plate brought a warmth to his chest that only deepened the conflict he felt. He knew that beyond the comfort of these walls, a storm waited. Mama Halima's judgment, unspoken but heavy, awaited him in the hospital. "Omari," Amina said gently, glancing over her shoulder with a smile that carried both warmth and a hint of concern. "The breakfast is ready. Don't stay too long in your thoughts." He stepped closer, reaching for her hand. "I will," he replied softly, squeezing her fingers. "But today, I must face what has been weighing in the air for too long." She nodded, her eyes reflecting both understanding and worry. Mama is proud, but her pride can be sharp, Remember, love and patience are your shields. Omari took a deep breath, letting the words sink in. The apartment felt like a sanctuary, a haven where love was tangible, but he knew it was temporary. Beyond its walls, the hospital awaited, a white, sterile building that symbolized more than illness. It was a crossroads where truth, pride, and family secrets collided. Whispers traveled through its hallways, carrying judgments from those too quick to speak, but too cautious to listen. He carried the breakfast tray to the small dining table, sitting across from Amina. Their fingers brushed occasionally as they ate, a silent conversation of comfort and reassurance. The simplicity of the moment belied the storm looming ahead. Every gesture, every glance between them, was a reminder that their bond was strong, yet fragile under the weight of tradition and expectation. Omari's thoughts wandered to Mama Halima. She had raised Amina with sharp sense of honor, her voice firm and unyielding, her eyes scrutinizing even the smallest gestures. To earn her respect had always been a careful dance, one step forward, one careful pause. And now, in the hospital, the dance would take on a new rhythm, one dictated by sickness, vulnerability, and unspoken resentment. He finished his tea in silence, watching Amina clear the tray. "I will go now," he said quietly, his voice steady but edged with tension. "And I will do my best to walk through that door with the respect and care she deserves, even if it shatters me inside." Amina reached out, brushing his cheek. "Omari, no matter what you hear or see, remember who you are. Your heart is your strength." With that, Omari rose, leaving the warmth of home for the uncertain corridors of the hospital. Outside, the town was alive, a mixture of tradition and modernity. White houses standing proudly next to older clay ones, children running past vendors, and elders speaking quietly under the shade of trees. Every step forward reminded him of the weight he carried, not just as a husband, but as a son-in-law navigating a path defined by cultural expectations, familial loyalty, and a desire to maintain honor in the eyes of those he respected most. The sun had fully risen now, casting its golden light over the town streets, where modernity brushed against tradition in every corner. Omari stepped out of his home, the door closing softly behind him. His feet carried him over the smooth white sidewalks, past the sleek white houses that gleamed in the morning light. Yet between these houses, the old clay-colored structures stood like silent witnesses to the past, their walls thick with stories and memories that whispered of ancestors and customs long preserved. As he walked, Omari's eyes roamed the small shops where women displayed brightly colored fabrics, and the market stalls where fresh fruits and vegetables glistened under the sun. The chatter of neighbors filled the air, but amid the greetings and laughter, he noticed the subtle glances exchanged. Some were curious, some judging. A few whispered, casting fleeting glances his way. In this town, every person knew everyone's story, or at least believed they did, and the weight of reputation was felt as heavily as the sun on his shoulders. He adjusted the strap of the small bag on his shoulder, carrying the few items he had brought from Mama Halima. Even this simple act felt laden with meaning. Every step he took was measured, aware of the eyes that followed, the mouths that murmured. The streets, alive with life, seemed to reflect the duality of his own world, a place where love and respect coexisted with gossip, envy, and expectation. Passing a cluster of elders seated beneath the shade of a mango tree, Omari bowed his head in respect. They nodded in return, their eyes sharp and knowing, as if reading not just his face but his intentions, his heart. One elder muttered a proverb softly, loud enough for Omari to catch. "The one who walks with humility carries both honor and burden." He carried those words quietly in his heart, feeling the weight of duty pressing upon him. The closer he drew to the hospital, the quieter the town became, as if the streets themselves were holding their breath. The white building loomed ahead, modern and stark. Yet within its walls, Omari sensed a different kind of life, a crossroad where sickness, pride, and family secrets intersected. He could feel the unspoken tension pressing against the glass windows, a mix of anticipation and judgment awaiting him. He slowed his steps, taking in the people seated on benches outside the hospital. Families, visitors, and staff moved with purpose, yet their faces carried stories. Whispers floated on the breeze, subtle and cutting. Omari could almost hear them, threads of curiosity, suspicion, and quiet judgment stitching together a tapestry of community opinion. "Amari," he murmured to himself, tightening his grip on the bag. "Walk with respect, speak with care, and keep your heart strong." His words were both prayer and preparation. He took another step forward, toward the doors of the hospital, feeling the weight of expectation, tradition, and the delicate dance of familial honor guiding his every move. Each stride carried him closer to Mama Halima, closer to the unspoken truths and possible revelations that awaited. His mind traced memories of Amina's gentle advice, of her trust in him, and of the love they shared, a bond he knew could withstand whispers and judgment, if only he remained steadfast. The hospital door stood before him now, a threshold not just of walls and hallways, but of the emotional and moral journey he was about to traverse. The hospital stood ahead like a silent sentinel, its white walls gleaming under the morning sun. Modern glass doors reflected the world outside, sleek cars, neatly painted houses, and the bustling life of the town. But Amari's eyes caught the subtle touches of tradition woven into the structure. Carved wooden panels, intricate patterns etched along the hallways, and a small shrine with simple, flickering candle in the corner. Even in this modern place, the past and the present walked side by side. Amari's heart beat steadily, but with a quiet tension. He adjusted the strap of the small bag he carried, the weight of it reminding him of the responsibility he bore, not just as a husband, but as a son-in-law entering a household of expectations and judgment. Every step toward the entrance felt like a crossing of worlds, love and respect on one side, pride and unspoken resentment on the other. As he stepped inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and flowers, hospitality mixed with the starkness of illness. Visitors moved quietly, some in whispered conversations, some sitting alone, lost in worry. Amari's gaze followed them, noting the way people cast glances, their eyes reflecting curiosity and judgment. In this place, even the smallest action could ripple into whispered tales. Stories passed from room to room like invisible currents. He paused near the reception desk, noticing the polished white surfaces and the soft hum of activity. The receptionist greeted him with a polite nod, and Amari returned it, bowing his head in respect. "I'm here to see Mama Halima," he said quietly, his voice steady but carrying the weight of care. "Room 204 just up the hall," the receptionist replied, her tone neutral but her eyes lingering, as though sensing the tension he carried. Walking down the corridor, Amari felt the hospital shift around him. The walls, white and modern, were punctuated with hints of culture, framed proverbs, traditional patterns on the doors, and a vase of local flowers at every junction. Each detail seemed to whisper of life lessons, reminders that strength, patience, and honor were necessary tools in navigating both illness and family. When he reached Mama Halima's room, he paused outside, taking a deep breath. He could hear the faint sounds of her voice, words laced with emotion, sharp and unguarded. The rhythm of her speech was familiar, yet today it seemed heavier, carrying undercurrents he had not anticipated. "Amari," he whispered to himself, pressing a hand lightly to his chest. "Walk with respect. Speak with honesty. Listen with your heart." The door before him was not just an entrance to a room, but to a crossroads where family secrets, pride, and vulnerability awaited. Beyond it lay the truths that could shatter or mend, that could test his patience, his humility, and the love that bound him to Amina. Each step closer made his pulse quicken, every fiber of his being aware that this visit could change the unspoken dynamics of his marriage, and a delicate balance of respect and reputation that shaped his life. Amari's hand hovered over the doorknob, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingers. Outside, the modern world continued its rhythm, the town moving past sleek houses and bustling streets. Yet inside, in that white room, a story of loyalty, judgment, and emotional reckoning was about to unfold. Amari's footsteps echoed softly on the paved streets as he walked toward the hospital, the morning sun casting long shadows across the whitewashed buildings. The town around him thrummed with life, a careful blend of modern architecture and the traces of tradition. Women in vibrant patterned wraps carried baskets of produce, their laughter mingling with the hum of passing vehicles. Children chased one another through narrow lanes, calling out in voices that rang with innocence and mischief. And yet, beneath this lively scene, Amari felt the watchful eyes of the community. the invisible weight of judgment and expectation pressing upon him. As he walked, memories of the elders' lessons filled his mind. His father's voice, deep and measured, had often warned him, "A son-in-law is the mirror of his home. Respect and honor are your shields. Amari, the eyes of the family and the town will always see more than you show." He had listened carefully, knowing that words were not merely speech but seeds planted in the heart, destined to bear fruit when tested. Amari thought of Amina, his beloved wife, whose gentle laughter could brighten the dullest morning. She had always reminded him, softly, that love was not just a feeling but an action, a daily weaving of care, patience, and understanding. Yet he knew that love alone could not shield him from the scrutiny of Mama Halima, Amina's mother, whose eyes had long carried the weight of tradition and pride. Respecting her required more than politeness. It demanded tact, humility, and awareness of the delicate balance of honor in their community. The hospital loomed ahead, a towering structure of white stone and glass, gleaming in the sunlight. To most, it was a place of healing, but to Amari, it had always been more than that, a crossroads of truth, where the veneer of civility could crack, revealing the fragile and sometimes harsh reality beneath. Its walls were sterile, yet hints of tradition adorned the corridors. Hand-carved frames with local proverbs, patterns reminiscent of ancestral art, and small vases holding fresh flowers brought by visitors. Even in this modern setting, the whispers of the past were ever present, reminding all who entered that life, respect, and family were threads woven together across generations. He approached the main doors, taking a slow, deliberate breath. Inside, the air would smell of antiseptic and hope, of fear and care entwined. He envisioned Mama Halima lying in her hospital bed, frail but still formidable, her sharp gaze capable of cutting through pretense. Would she see him as a devoted husband her daughter deserved, or as the outsider, the one who had yet to prove his worth in the eyes of family and tradition? The thought tightened the grip on his chest, a reminder that the stakes were more than simple familial politeness. They were entwined with honor, reputation, and the respect demanded by culture. Amari recalled the stories elders told him of sons-in-law who faltered, of those whose hearts were pure yet were misunderstood, whose patience and humility were tested in ways both seen and unseen. He remembered the proverb Mama Halima herself had once recited to him at a family gathering. The river tests a stone, not to break it, but to reveal its true shape. He reflected on this quietly, feeling the truth of it ripple through him. Today he would be tested, not by the illness that confined his mother-in-law, but by the unspoken judgments, the subtle glances, and the hidden words that waited behind closed doors. Amina's presence in his life was a source of quiet strength. He could still see her preparing breakfast earlier, the care in her hands, the soft warmth of her smile that seemed to shine even in the simplest of moments. It was this love, tempered by duty and respect, that guided him now. Each step toward the hospital doors was a step taken with reverence, a silent prayer for courage, and a hope that he could navigate the tension that awaited without faltering. He reached the entrance and paused, hand resting on the cool metal handle. The doors reflected the world outside, the gleaming white houses, the orderly streets, and the townspeople going about their lives. Yet, stepping inside would bring him into a world where masks could slip, where loyalty, love, and truth would collide with pride, resentment, and unspoken expectation. He could hear in his mind the voices of elders, the wisdom of family, and the stories passed down to those who had walked this path before him, tested by circumstance and fate. Amari, he whispered to himself, walk with honor, speak with humility, observe with patience. With a deep breath, he pushed open the doors. The cool, sterile air of the hospital greeted him, carrying the quiet sounds of life and illness, the soft murmur of visitors, the occasional beep of distant machines, the shuffle of nurses' shoes. Every detail reminded him that he was stepping into more than a hospital room. He was stepping into a realm where the heart and reputation would be measured, where his place as a husband, a son-in-law, and a man of integrity would be quietly, yet firmly judged. He moved forward, each step deliberate, his senses alert. The white walls, modern yet adorned with subtle symbols of tradition, seemed to pulse with anticipation. Beyond these walls, in the room where Mama Halima rested, lay the truth that could either strengthen bonds or break them. And in this space, where modernity met ancestral values, Amari would confront the delicate balance of respect, loyalty, and honor, a test that would mark the path of his life, his marriage, and his place within the family he cherished. The door to her room came into view. Amari paused, hand on the knob, feeling the weight of his lineage, his vows, and the wisdom of elders pressing upon him. Beyond it awaited the unspoken words that could wound or heal, a moment where his patience, courage, and humility would determine not only the outcome of this visit, but the deeper measure of his character. He inhaled, steadying his heart, and with quiet reverence, he opened the door, ready to face the truth that waited and the subtle storm of emotions that would soon unfold. Amari paused by the corridor window, his heart caught in a quiet storm of anticipation and apprehension. Beyond the glass, Mama Halima lay in her hospital bed, frail yet radiating the same formidable authority that had long defined her in the family. Even in her weakened state, her posture carried dignity, her head held high as if the weight of generations rested upon her shoulders. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, scanned the room as though no detail could escape her notice, an unspoken challenge to all who entered. Amari felt the old familiar stirrings of respect and fear, the twin currents that had guided him throughout his life as a son-in-law bound by duty and cultural expectation. He thought of Amina, whose love had been his steady anchor. In the mornings, she would smile with such ease and warmth, weaving gentle threads of care into the mundane tasks of daily life. Amari had seen the subtle strength in her hands as she prepared breakfast, the tenderness in her voice as she spoke to him softly about small dreams and shared laughter. That same love now gave him courage, for he knew that his devotion to Amina was more than a bond between two hearts. It was a shield against the scrutiny of family and the whispered judgments of the town. As he observed Mama Halima, Amari remembered the teachings of the elders, their voices echoing like a distant drumbeat in his mind. A son-in-law is a reflection of the household he enters. His father had said, "Eyes stern but full of wisdom. Walk with humility. Speak with caution, and honor the path laid by those before you. For the river tests the stone not to break it, but to reveal its true shape." Amari felt the truth of these words pressing on him now. Each step he took in the hospital corridor would be measured by more than etiquette. It would be weighed against legacy, loyalty, and the unspoken laws of respect. The corridor was quiet, punctuated only by the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes and the distant murmur of visitors in neighboring rooms. Sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long patterns of light and shadow across the polished floor. In these beams, Amari saw both clarity and uncertainty, the duality of life itself. The hospital, he realized, was more than a place of healing. It was a crossroads where hidden truths emerged, where facades of civility could slip, revealing the rawness of human emotion. Within these walls, secrets would surface, loyalties would be tested, and the quiet undercurrents of resentment and judgment would move like a hidden river beneath the surface. Amari's thoughts drifted to the subtle expectations of sons-in-law in their community. To be married to Amina was a blessing, yet it came with the invisible weight of scrutiny. Every gesture, every word, every glance could be interpreted, judged, and remembered. Mama Halima's gaze, even from afar, carried that judgment, a silent measure of his worthiness, a reminder that respect was not given freely, but earned through patience, integrity, and steadfast devotion. He knew that to falter now, even in a seemingly small way, could ripple outward, affecting not just his relationship with Amina, but his standing within the family and the wider town. He remembered the stories elders shared, tales of men whose hearts were pure yet whose patience was tested. One tale spoke of a young man who had visited his mother-in-law during a time of illness, only to overhear words that pierced deeper than any physical wound. The moral, Amari recalled, was clear. Courage and humility must walk hand in hand, for honor is both shield and guide in moments when truth and pride collide. He felt that same test now, a quiet tension coiling in his chest, urging him to remain vigilant, observant, and controlled. Through the window, he noticed Mama Halima's subtle movements, the lift of a hand, the turn of her head, the slight furrow of her brow. Each motion seemed imbued with purpose, as though she were silently assessing all who entered her space. The hum of medical equipment created a rhythm, punctuating the stillness with gentle reminders of vulnerability and mortality. Amari understood that illness could strip away pretense, exposing both the frailty and strength within a person. In this exposure lay the potential for revelation, for truth, and perhaps, for the first time, insight into the unspoken feelings Mama Halima held toward him. The hospital corridor, with its clean lines of modern architecture softened by touches of traditional decor, hand-carved wooden frames, woven patterns in muted tones, and small bouquets of flowers, felt both welcoming and intimidating. It was a space where modernity and tradition coexisted, mirroring the town itself. In this juxtaposition, Amari saw the reflection of his own journey, a man navigating the delicate balance between love, duty, and the scrutiny of family. His hand brushed against the wall for grounding, fingers tracing the cool surface as he prepared to step forward into uncertainty. Amari's gaze lingered on Mama Halima, and he felt the familiar pulse of responsibility beat in his chest. She was more than a mother-in-law. She was a keeper of legacy, a symbol of authority, and a living reminder of the values that guided their community. To meet her expectations, to show honor and integrity, required more than mere words. It demanded the full measure of his heart, patience, and humility. Each breath he drew was deliberate, each movement measured, as he readied himself to face the silent judgment that lay ahead. As he moved toward the door, the corridor seemed to narrow, the shadows deepening in contrast to the bright sunlight outside. Amari's step slowed as he recalled Amina's gentle voice urging him to trust in love and the strength of their bond. "Your heart is known to me," she had whispered the night before, "and that is what matters most." He clutched this reassurance tightly, drawing courage from the quiet intimacy they shared. It was this connection, grounded in mutual respect and devotion, that gave him the resilience to confront whatever waited beyond the door. Amari reached the threshold, hand on the handle, and paused. Through the glass, he saw Mama Halima's eyes meet his, piercing, discerning, and filled with layers of expectation. He felt the weight of the past, the traditions, and the silent judgments of the family converge in that gaze. And yet, beneath the intensity, he sensed vulnerability, a fragile humanity that illness could not conceal. In that moment, he understood that respect and love were intertwined, that his actions would speak louder than words, and that courage meant facing both judgment and truth without faltering. With a deep, steadying breath, he pushed the door open, stepping into the room where the invisible currents of family, honor, and unspoken words waited. The air was filled with the quiet rhythm of life. The soft beeping of machines, the rustle of bedding, and the subtle scent of flowers brought by visitors. Amari's eyes never left Mama Halima, whose frailty did not diminish her commanding presence. Every step he took was measured, deliberate, a silent prayer for patience, humility, and the wisdom to navigate the delicate path that lay ahead. In the stillness of that room, time seemed suspended. Amari felt the convergence of tradition and modernity, of love and expectation, of truth and judgment. The hospital was more than a place of healing. It was a stage where character, honor, and loyalty would be revealed. And in that space, beneath the watchful eyes of Mama Halima and the unseen gaze of community, Amari prepared to confront the delicate balance of respect, courage, and devotion that defined his life as a husband, a son-in-law, and a man striving to honor both family and tradition. He stepped fully inside, heart steady but alert, ready to face the words and judgments that could either wound or enlighten, to navigate the quiet storm of emotion and expectation that awaited. And as the door closed softly behind him, the journey of honor, humility, and revelation began in earnest, a true test of the heart that would echo far beyond the walls of the hospital, shaping the destiny of love, family, and respect. Amari lingered at the threshold of the hospital corridor, his heart drumming like the distant beat of the village drum he had known as a boy. The air inside carried the sterile scent of antiseptic, mingled with the faint perfume of flowers brought by visitors, a reminder that life and death were always close companions. He drew a deep breath, tried to steady the tumult of his thoughts, yet each inhale seemed to amplify the knot of uncertainty in his chest. This visit, simple on the surface, was fraught with invisible tensions, the unspoken judgments, the weight of cultural expectations, and the delicate web of family honor that could snap at the slightest misstep. The corridor stretched before him like a river of muted light and shadow, each window casting patterns on the floor that seemed a whisper of secrets waiting to surface. Amari's eyes fell on the polished handrails, the soft hum of medical equipment, and the distant murmur of visitors in neighboring rooms. Everything spoke of order, of calm, Yet beneath the surface, he could sense the undercurrents of emotion, the unvoiced words of resentment, the subtle glances of concern, the fragile tension of pride and vulnerability. The hospital, he realized, was a crossroads in more ways than one, a place where illness stripped facades, where truths long buried could rise to the surface, and where hearts would be tested in silence. He thought of Mama Halima, his mother-in-law, and the stories Amina had shared of her sharp mind and unyielding standards. Even now, frail and confined to a bed, she carried the authority of generations in her posture, her gaze precise and assessing. Amari remembered how she had watched him the first time he entered her home as a young man, evaluating not just his manners, but the sincerity of his intentions. That gaze had remained a silent teacher, a reminder that respect was earned through humility, patience, and unwavering integrity. As he approached, Amari felt the invisible weight of her judgment pressing against him, a pressure tempered by his love for Amina and his own desire to uphold honor. A wave of nervousness coursed through him. His palms were slightly damp, and he adjusted the cuff of his shirt, a small gesture to claim control over the trembling inside. He thought of the elders in his village, their words echoing like a gentle chant in his memory. The son-in-law carries the mirror of the household. What is reflected back is shaped by his humility, his courage, and his heart. Amari clutched these words, repeating them silently like a protective talisman. Yet even as he sought courage, a seed of doubt grew. What if Mama Halima's thoughts of him were harsher than he imagined? What if his hopes for warmth and acceptance were met with cold scrutiny instead? Outside the window, sunlight spilled across the town, highlighting the sharp contrast between the whitewashed modern buildings and the traditional market stalls where life's rhythms persisted. The town itself seemed to mirror his internal conflict. Progress and tradition, hope and judgment, all intertwined. He pictured Amina, her gentle smile and steady presence, and the warmth of their morning routines. The quiet conversation over breakfast, the small act of care that revealed a love resilient enough to survive external pressures. It was this love that gave him courage. Yet even that courage felt fragile under the scrutiny of family expectations. Amari's steps carried him closer to the room, but each movement seemed weighted by the invisible expectations of society. Sons-in-law were more than partners. They were bearers of honor, custodians of family reputation. A misstep, a poorly chosen word, a hesitant gesture, all could ripple outward, interpreted by the keen eyes of relatives and neighbors. He felt the gaze of Mama Halima even before he saw her, imagining the quiet judgment in her eyes, the sharpness that had once unsettled him during family gatherings. And yet, he also sensed a flicker of vulnerability beneath her authority, a reminder that illness, like life, could reveal truths otherwise hidden. Through the corridor window, he glimpsed her form, frail but commanding. Her thin hand rested lightly on the bed, fingers curled with the quiet strength of someone accustomed to shaping her world with wisdom and resolve. Amari felt a mixture of fear and reverence, understanding that the challenge before him was not just to show respect, but to navigate the intricate dance of emotion, expectation, and family loyalty. The hospital's quiet ambience amplified his thoughts, each soft footstep echoing the internal drumbeat of doubt and determination. He remembered the lessons of his elders about humility and fortitude. The river tests the stone, not to break it, but to reveal its true form. That image returned to him with clarity now, as he prepared to step fully into the room. Every fiber is being focused on balance, between courage and caution, love and deference, hope and prudence. The hospital was more than a place of healing. It was a proving ground, a threshold where character and integrity will be measured, often in silence. Amari's mind wandered briefly to the whispers of the town, to the subtle judgments that followed every household, every family interaction. He knew that the eyes of the community were keen, that the role of son-in-law was never taken lightly. Yet he drew strength from the bond with Amina, from the silent affirmation that his intentions were pure, and from the knowledge that love, when tempered with respect, could withstand scrutiny. Each breath he drew was deliberate, grounding him in the moment, and he felt the tension in his chest ease slightly, replaced by a sharpened sense of resolve. He approached the door, hand hovering over the handle, heart steadying even as nervous anticipation fluttered in his chest. Through the glass, Mama Halima's eyes met his once more, sharp, calculating, yet laced with a depth of humanity that only those who had lived fully could convey. In that gaze, Omari recognized both challenge and opportunity, the weight of past expectations, and the promise of understanding that could be earned through courage and honesty. Taking a final deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was filled with a quiet rhythm, the soft beeping of machines, the rustle of bedsheets, and the gentle hum of life persisting in the face of illness. Mama Halima's eyes remained fixed on him, and in that moment, Omari felt the convergence of all his fears and hopes. The air seemed charged with anticipation, a silent witness to the dance of respect, honor, and truth about to unfold. He moved slowly toward her bedside, each step deliberate, heart attuned to the subtle nuances of expression and gesture. The weight of tradition, the scrutiny of family, and the pressures of reputation pressed upon him, yet he met them with humility and devotion. In this crucible, Omari understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it, and that honor was maintained not through grand declarations, but through measured actions and sincerity of heart. Standing beside Mama Halima, Omari allowed a small, respectful bow of his head. His voice, steady but soft, broke the silence. "Mama Halima, I came to see you, to share this moment with you. I hope to honor your wisdom and the family's strength." The room remained still, and in that pause he sensed the invisible threads of judgment and expectation weaving around him. Yet beneath it all, he felt the first stirrings of connection, the faint glimmer of understanding that perhaps, even amidst scrutiny and tension, respect and love could coexist. The hospital room, a crossroads of life, tradition, and modernity, held its breath as Omari prepared to face what would come next. The words, the judgments, and perhaps the revelations that lay just beyond polite expectation. In that charged silence, he realized that the true test of a man was not in grand gestures or spoken words, but in the quiet strength to honor love, uphold respect, and navigate the delicate currents of family, culture, and human truth. Omari stepped cautiously into the hospital's main corridor, his senses immediately alert to the rhythms of this unfamiliar yet familiar world. The soft hum of fluorescent lights overhead mixed with the distant beeping of monitors and the muted chatter of visitors, nurses, and patients. The space was immaculate, white walls gleaming with a polished sterility, yet woven into modernity were subtle touches of tradition, a carved wooden mask hanging near the reception, a small painting of a village scene tucked along a hallway. This convergence of old and new mirrored Omari's own life, straddling the line between modern aspirations and traditional responsibilities. As he moved forward, his eyes caught the myriad interactions unfolding around him. A family huddled together, speaking in low tones, their hands brushing briefly in comfort yet tinged with unspoken tension. A nurse guided an elderly woman to her bed, offering soft reassurances that seemed to conceal the urgency of illness. In another corner, a young couple whispered rapidly, glancing over their shoulders as if the walls themselves carried the weight of scrutiny. Every movement, every glance, seemed imbued with subtle judgment, an invisible tally of societal expectation. Omari felt it pressing on him, the quiet weight of observation, the unseen eyes of the community extending beyond the hospital walls. He paused near a seating area where visitors murmured in hushed voices. A group of women sat together, hands folded in their laps, heads slightly bowed, their murmurs floating like the wind carrying secrets. Omari could not hear every word, but fragments reached him. A mention of his name, the subtle curl of suspicion in someone's tone, a restrained laugh that did not reach the eyes. In that moment, he realized that the hospital was more than a place of healing. It was a crucible of truth, a stage where reputations and relationships were tested in the quiet glare of scrutiny. Omari's thoughts drifted to Mama Halima. Even from a distance, he could picture her, stooped yet formidable, her eyes sharp as a hawk, capable of reading the intentions of man in a single glance. He knew that beneath her frailty lay a mind that had navigated generations, a woman whose influence shaped the household in ways subtle yet profound. Today, he would stand before her, his character laid bare, and every gesture, word, and expression would be weighed against invisible scales of honor and propriety. The air around him seemed thick with anticipation. A young boy raced past, delivering medicine, while a woman hurriedly rearranged her mother's bedding. Each person moved with purpose, yet there was a rhythm to the chaos, a silent acknowledgement of the human drama, that unfolded daily within these walls. Omari felt the pressure of the expectations that accompanied him, not as an intruder, but as a member of the family tapestry, a son-in-law whose actions reflected not only on himself, but on the honor of those he loved. He noticed subtle interactions that revealed layers of tension. A visitor's eyes lingered too long on his polished shoes. A nurse tilted her head with knowing glance, and two women exchanged a wordless expression of caution and disapproval. Omari's heart quickened, and he instinctively straightened his posture, a silent reminder that respect was not just about words, but about presence, demeanor, and intent. Each step he took seemed to echo in the corridor, a drumbeat of anxiety and resolve. Passing a window, he glimpsed the courtyard outside, where white buildings gleamed under the morning sun. Families gathered in clusters, children weaving between adults, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the solemnity inside. The courtyard, like the hospital, was a blend of modernity and tradition, an arena where culture, status, and familial expectations intersected. Omari's mind wandered briefly to the lessons of elders, the value of humility, the importance of observing before speaking, the necessity of aligning one's actions with integrity. Today, these lessons were no longer abstract. They were his shield, his guide, and his test. A soft cough drew his attention to a nearby seating area where a matriarchal figure spoke quietly to her daughter, her tone low but edged with sharpness. Omari could feel the vibrations of their conversation, a subtle undercurrent of judgment and curiosity. He imagined their whispers carrying outside the room, threads of gossip that would weave through the town, reaching ears and hearts in ways he could neither control nor predict. The hospital, it seemed, was a microcosm of the community itself, a place where truth, rumor, and reputation collided with quiet intensity. He slowed his pace as he approached the ward where Mama Halima rested. Through the glass partition, he could see her form. Thin, upright despite her illness, her hands folded neatly over a blanket, eyes scanning the room with precision of someone accustomed to authority. There was a quiet strength in her presence, a sense that she weighed every visitor not just in terms of manners, but in terms of their character, their respect for family, and their understanding of the delicate bonds that held households together. Omari felt a shiver of anxiety, a mingling of reverence and fear, knowing that the judgment he would face was both personal and emblematic of broader societal expectations. Around him, life continued with its muted drama. A young man adjusted his mother's pillow, a woman brushed her father's hair back with careful fingers, and a child clutched a small toy, eyes wide with the gravity of adult tension he could not yet comprehend. Omari absorbed these details, aware that every gesture, every unspoken word, was part of the tapestry he was stepping into. He felt the invisible threads of observation tighten, the whispers and glances shaping the atmosphere, a reminder that he was never alone in the eyes of the community. As he neared the door, Omari reflected on the balance of hope and fear, of love and expectation. His mind replayed conversations with Amina, the warmth of her smile, the quiet assurance that he acted with sincerity and devotion. Yet the hospital, with its white walls and hushed voices, reminded him that sincerity alone was not enough. He had to navigate judgment with tact, to honor the authority of Mama Halima, while asserting the respect he owed as her son-in-law, and to do so in a manner that preserved dignity for himself, his wife, and the family as a whole. He paused, taking a deliberate breath, feeling the pulse of the hospital around him, the rhythm of life, illness, and human complexity. Whispers brushed against him like a gentle wind, carrying the weight of expectation and the subtle sting of unspoken scrutiny. Omari's heart thumped in rhythm with that invisible drum, each beat a reminder that the day would test not only his courage, but the very essence of his character. Finally, he stepped fully into the room, the threshold marking the intersection of past lessons, present tensions, and future possibilities. The soft rustle of sheets, the faint scent of medicine, and the gaze of Mama Halima greeted him. Her eyes, sharp yet observant, measured him with silent precision. In that instant, Omari understood that this moment was more than a visit. It was a reckoning, a proving ground where respect, love,